The party room that critics mocked just became the most important building in America. Twice, 2 Republican presidents. One hotel, 45 years apart. Reagan in 1981. Trump in 2026. Same address on Connecticut Avenue. And the media spent the week after April 25th debating whether the White House ballroom is a vanity project. I want to walk you through both nights. What happened? What almost happened? And what will happen if we keep sending the President of the United States and the entire line of succession to a commercial hotel in the middle of Washington, D.C. and call it a security plan? Because after April 25th, 2026, that argument is finished. I do not care how many op-eds get written about historic views of the South Lawn. It is finished. March 30, 1981. The Washington Hilton, attempt number 1. President Ronald Reagan has just finished a speech at the Washington Hilton. He walks out the side exit toward his limousine, T Street NW, 2:27 p.m. And a 25-year-old named John Hinckley Jr. steps out of a crowd and opens fire with a .22 caliber revolver. 6 shots in 1.7 seconds. White House Press Secretary James Brady takes a bullet to the head. A DC officer and a Secret Service agent are also hit. A ricocheted round has already entered Reagan's chest. They do not know this until he starts coughing blood on the way to the hospital. Reagan nearly dies on the operating table. He survives. Brady suffers permanent brain damage, spends the rest of his life in a wheelchair, and dies in 2014. His death is ruled a homicide. The consequence of that bullet, 33 years delayed. In the aftermath, the Hilton installs what becomes known as the President's Corridor, a secured tunnel for future presidential departures. Metal detectors are added. Lessons are learned. Protocols tighten, but the hotel remains a hotel, open to the public, hundreds of rooms, multiple access points, and every year, for the next 45 years, presidents keep going back because it was the biggest room in Washington and nobody wanted to have the harder conversation. April 25, 2026, the Washington Hilton, attempt number 2. A 31-year-old from Torrance, California, named Cole Thomas Allen, checks into the Washington Hilton as a hotel guest in the days before the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Mechanical engineering from Caltech. Masters in computer science from Cal State Dominguez Hills. Traveled cross-country by train. Quiet. Kept to himself. His own family had concerns about his increasingly radical statements. His brother warned law enforcement. He walked into that hotel armed anyway, because not one person stopped him. 10 minutes before he ran for the ballroom. He sent his family a farewell letter. He called himself the Friendly Federal Assassin. I am going to quote from that document directly, because the media buried most of it. Administration officials, not including Mr. Patel, they are targets, prioritized from highest ranking to lowest. Secret Service. They are targets only if necessary, and to be incapacitated non-lethally if possible, aka, I hope they're wearing body armor, because center mass with shotguns messes up people who aren't. I would still go through most everyone here to get to the targets if it were absolutely necessary, on the basis that most people chose to attend a speech by a pedophile, rapist, and traitor, and are thus complicit. He chose buckshot over slugs. His stated reason? To minimize casualties. This man wrote rules of engagement for murdering the President of the United States, and as many cabinet members as he could reach. Anti-Christian rhetoric runs throughout. He attended a No Kings protest in California before making the trip. The acting attorney general confirmed political motivation. In his postscript, after the formal declarations, after the goodbyes, he wrote about the security at the hotel with something close to contempt. I expected security cameras at every bend, bugged hotel rooms, armed agents every 10 feet, metal detectors out the wazoo. What I got is nothing. No damn security. Not in transport, not in the hotel, not in the event. I walk in with multiple weapons, and not a single person there considers the possibility that I could be a threat. If I was an Iranian agent, instead of an American citizen, I could have brought a damn Ma Deuce in here and no one would have noticed. A Ma Deuce is the M2, 5.0 caliber heavy machine gun. He believed he could have walked one through the front door. And based on the fact that he did walk in with a shotgun, a handgun, and multiple knives, and made it all the way to the staircase, he may not have been wrong. At 8:34 p.m., Allen charged past the security checkpoint, fired at least 1 to 2 shots, and was stopped by Secret Service at the top of a staircase leading directly into the room where the President, the First Lady, Vice President Vance, Defense Secretary Hegseth, Secretary of State Rubio, and approximately 2,600 other people were sitting down to dinner. One agent took a bullet to his vest. He survived. Allen never made it through the ballroom doors, but he made it past the checkpoint. He made it to that staircase with a shotgun, at the same hotel where Hinckley nearly killed Ronald Reagan 45 years earlier. The question is no longer whether the Washington Hilton is a vulnerable venue. That question has been answered twice with bullets. The only question left is whether we build the facility that prevents a third, what the critics called it and what it actually is. Since construction began after the East Wing demolition in October 2025, the opposition has been relentless. Monument to ego. Taxpayer money for a party room. 8 months of this, from people who had zero alternative proposals for where the president safely hosts 2,600 people at once. Here is what they left out. The above-ground ballroom is privately funded, not a dime of taxpayer money for the event space. But that is not the part that exposes the argument as bad faith performance. The part they never wanted to discuss is what is being built beneath that ballroom. President Trump confirmed it on March 29, 2026, aboard Air Force One. The military is building a massive complex under the ballroom. The ballroom essentially becomes a shed. A shed. The 90,000 square foot ballroom with Corinthian columns and ballistic glass is the cover. The cost of the underground portion, classified. Because what is going into that ground is not for adversaries to read about. That is not how you build a party room. What replaced the old bunker and why it had to change. The original Presidential Emergency Operations Center was built in 1942 under FDR after Pearl Harbor, described by someone who had been inside as a very complicated submarine built in the Vassending, 1940s. 16 seats, the military red phone, independent power, water, air filtration. It sheltered Cheney staff on 9/11. It served every president, from Roosevelt through Biden. In October 2025, it was demolished with the East Wing. Not renovated, not upgraded, demolished. Every wall, every classified line, every system running for 8 decades, rubble. Because 1942 threats and 2026 threats are not the same conversation. Russia and China have hypersonic missiles traveling over a mile per second. A submarine launch from the Atlantic reaches Washington in under 3 minutes. The old PEOC's communications took minutes to spin up. The math does not work anymore. A nuclear detonation at high altitude, 200 miles up, would not kill anyone on the ground directly. What it would do is generate an electromagnetic pulse that fries every unshielded electronic system across the eastern seaboard in a fraction of a second. Everything dark. Instantly. The new facility has to be a complete Faraday cage, one unsealed gap, and the protection fails entirely. America's own GBU, 5.7 massive ordnance penetrator, weighs 30,000 pounds and punches through 200 feet of earth before detonating. The Air Force used it in combat for the first time in June 2025, dropping 14 of them on hardened Iranian nuclear facilities during Operation Epic Fury. Our adversaries are developing equivalents. And drones. The $300 FPV drone delivering precision munitions is no longer theoretical. It is a daily reality in Ukraine. It has to be factored into protecting the most important building in the free world. The engineering, because numbers do not care about your feelings. I am a science teacher. I teach physics. So let me give you the actual numbers. The foundation, concrete, is mixed with steel fibers, blast-resistant armor, not standard mix. It has to stay between 64 and 68 degrees Fahrenheit from a Maryland plant to the White House site. 4 degrees of tolerance through DC, traffic, past protesters, through security checkpoints. Every pore verified by 3 separate inspectors. You do not do that for a dance floor. The rebar is as thick as your wrist, spaced every 6 inches. Standard military bunker construction requires survival at 1,000 kilopascals. Roughly 150 pounds per square inches of blast pressure hitting every surface simultaneously. Your house collapses at 3 pounds per square inches. This facility has to take 50 times that. The rebar density is so extreme that workers walk across the grid like a solid floor. At 6-inch spacing, it essentially is. The electrical conduit carries hardened communications identical to the West Wing Situation Room, except engineered to survive an EMP that would destroy every standard wire in Washington. Automatic chemical weapon sensor shutoffs on the pipes. Redundancy that exceeds Air Force One. Let that one land. A flying military command center is the gold standard of resilience, and this building exceeds it. The glass panels on the south lawn side are 30 feet tall, 10 feet wide, and 5 inches thick, 3,000 pounds each. Bullet resistant. 3 factories running around the clock because no single facility can produce them fast enough. They face the lawn where Marine One lands daily, so they permanently withstand hurricane-force rotor downdrafts. The construction team is Clark Construction, $24 billion in hardened government facilities. The design firm is Shalom Baranes Associates, the same firm that reinforced the Pentagon. You do not hire that team for a ballroom. You hire them when the building needs to survive the end of the world. The problem that cannot be fixed with more checkpoints. After 1981, the Hilton improved. The President's Corridor, metal detectors, tighter protocols. The Secret Service absorbed every lesson Hinckley taught them. And in 2026, Cole Allen checked in 2 days early, armed himself in his room, and made it to the staircase. This is not a criticism of Secret Service. The agents who stopped Allen are professionals who performed under impossible conditions. One took a round to his vest and kept working. They are the reason April 25th is not the worst night in modern American political history. The problem is the geometry. A commercial hotel has hundreds of rooms on floors above the event space, a public lobby, a front desk where anyone can book a room 2 days in advance, and elevator banks discharging guests near the secured area. No amount of additional checkpoints changes the fundamental layout. Allen described walking into that hotel with multiple weapons and feeling the sense of arrogance, the assumption that nobody would try it. He expected comprehensive security, he found none, and he documented it for the record. On White House grounds, the geometry is different in every way that matters. No public lobby, no hotel room to arm yourself in 2 days prior, no floors above the event space at all. Every person present is accounted for, from arrival to departure. The perimeter is not a checkpoint. It is the entire grounds. Trump said it plainly after the incident. This event would never have happened with the militarily top secret ballroom currently under construction. That is not spin. That is physics. A word to those still filing lawsuits. Yes, there are lawsuits. The National Trust for Historic Preservation filed in December 2025, arguing the administration skipped legally required reviews. Courts have allowed the underground security work to continue as strictly necessary for national security while issuing partial injunctions above ground. I understand historic preservation concerns. The White House is 234 years old. Those are real arguments. But Jim Quinn's first law applies here with unusual clarity. Liberalism always generates the exact opposite of its stated intent. The people most loudly filing these lawsuits are largely from the same coalition that spent 2 years calling Donald Trump an existential fascist threat who must be stopped at any cost, and then expressed horror when people who believed that rhetoric acted on it. They created the climate. Now they are in federal court trying to halt the facility that reduces the physical consequences of that climate. A classified filing was submitted in the proceedings that not even the opposing attorneys were permitted to read, because what is being built down there is that sensitive. The administration confirmed all of this publicly, on camera and in court filings. The lawsuits continue anyway. 2 assassination attempts at the same hotel 45 years apart. The argument being pressed is that we should prioritize the Pennsylvania Avenue view. I will leave that there. The bottom line. I spent 23 years in the United States Army as a combat medic. I have stood in threat environments where secure and not secure is not a policy debate. It is measured in who walks out. I know what a hardened position looks like. I know what wishful thinking looks like. The Washington Hilton has been wishful thinking since 1981. We got lucky the first time because the Secret Service was fast and Reagan was strong enough to survive surgery. We got lucky the second time because the vest held. I want to be honest about something because I am a man of faith, and I cannot write about 3 assassination attempts on a single president without acknowledging what I actually believe is happening here. Daniel chapter 2 verse 21 says it plainly in the LSB translation. He changes the times and the seasons. He removes kings and establishes kings. Proverbs chapter 21 verse 1. The king's heart is like channels of water in the hand of Yahweh. He turns it wherever he wishes. Psalm chapter 75 verses 6 to 7 closes the argument. Promotion does not come from the east or the west, but God is the judge. He puts down one and exalts another. Romans chapter 13 verse 1 tells us, there is no authority except from God, and those which exist are established by God. If that is true, and I believe it is, then when a bullet passed an inch from Trump's ear in Butler, and when an agent's vest stopped around at the Hilton, those were not simply fortunate outcomes of physics and reaction time. That looks a lot more like providence. But here is where people get it wrong. God's sovereignty does not work in spite of means. It works through them. Moses still had to hold out his staff. The disciples still had to hand out the bread. The surgeon still had to operate on Reagan. The agent still had to take the bullet. Nehemiah did not tell the workers to put down their tools because God would protect Jerusalem. He told half of them to hold spears while the other half built. Our God will fight for us. And then he went right back to building the wall. Nehemiah chapter 4, verse 20. If the authority of a leader is established by God, then the protection of that leader is a duty we owe, not just to the man, but to the one who placed him there. God will protect him is not a substitute for blast-resistant concrete. It is the reason we have an obligation to use it. The White House ballroom is our wall. The fact that we have needed Providence twice at the same address in 45 years is not proof that Providence alone is sufficient. It is the clearest possible signal that we are being given the time to build something better before we need it a third time. We got lucky is not a security doctrine. The vest held is not a long-term plan. 2 Republican presidents, 1 hotel, 45 years. The pattern does not require a PhD to read. Build it, finish it, because there should never be a third Republican president attacked at the Washington Hilton. Not because we got lucky again, but because we finally built the building that makes going back there unnecessary. The data here is 2 bullets at the same address, 45 years apart. The response is the building going up on White House grounds right now. The ballroom is not the extravagance. Pretending we do not need it is. If this article made you think, like this article so the algorithm shows it to people who need to read it. Subscribe and ring the bell. Share this. Every share really helps. Use it. Comment below with your take. 2 Republican presidents, same hotel, 45 years apart. Has the ballroom debate finally been settled? Tell me. And if you want more of this, the data, the history, the science, the stories, join BC's Classroom community or follow me on YouTube. Even better, subscribe to my account. It is about the cost of a cup of coffee per month. That is it. Your support keeps this classroom open, and I promise I will never run out of material as long as the left keeps trying to outdumb itself. But what do I know? I am only a science teacher and Army combat medic who has actually stood in a threat environment and knows the difference between secure on paper and secure in reality.